You don't want to be giving wildlife treats or snacks, or even things like, milk bones or dog food. Those things are not appropriate for wildlife. Water is obviously very important, and a lot of times in the winter, water is frozen. So one thing that's really wonderful that you can do is put out one of those heated dishes, just not very deep, a shallow dish. And if you can do one of the heated ones, if you can extend a extension cord from your house or your barn far enough so they have kind of a out of the way remote area to get a drink, but that's a big plus, having a source of water. And birds, we often don't think of baths in the wintertime, but birds do take baths in the winter, and it's very beneficial to them. They preen, they mix those oils going through their feathers, and that helps them to stay warm in the wintertime. So there are some times we don't want to feed wildlife. We don't want wildlife to associate us with the food and become too familiar. That's called habituation, and that is dangerous. Dangerous for the people, it's dangerous for the wildlife. So the funny thing is, often if I say don't feed dangerous animals, people think of bears, which of course are not as active in the winter, but they think of those bigger animals. But things like a buck deer, a male deer, can be quite dangerous. And a raccoon. Raccoons can be kind of temperamental. In wildlife rehab, I raised about 20 to 25 raccoons, that were brought in and rehabilitated and then released. And even as babies, they can be pretty mean. So, make sure that your feeding area is removed enough so that those animals are not associating food with you. So birds are actually a really popular animal to feed during the winter. We often don't realize, how many bird species stick around, during the winter time. And so supplemental food and water is very appreciated by them. A lot of birds in the winter really like suet. That fat gives them energy, helps them to keep warm. Whole nuts, peanuts, black sunflower seeds, thistle is all good foods. You can get the appropriate feeders to go with the different foods. I don't recommend getting those mixed bags of food unless you're getting, a high-end one, because those mixed bags often have a lot of seeds that just go to waste. So you're not getting a good return for your money. And also they're often just kind of the swept off the floor, kind of dirty varieties. So it's usually much better to buy the whole seeds. You can buy them in bulk to lower your prices, and feed those. Where you place bird feeders is also really important. You may have heard of bird strikes. That is where a bird flies into your window. And they do that because they can't necessarily see the glass. What they see is a reflection. So if there's trees or grass that's being reflected in your window, they think they can fly to that tree, and they will hit the window and often die or cause a head injury. So you either want your bird feeders to be very close to your house, like about 3 feet from your house, or 30 feet from your house, so that the birds can tell that as a window. So for squirrels basically want to eat whatever the birds have. So, they're pretty easy. Peanuts, stay away from, for both birds and squirrels and the chipmunks, no salt, no roasted, just, raw, natural nuts are the best. We have a video on making a treat for squirrels. that I'll put up here and in the description that you can do. It's a great family kind of activity. If you're worried about the squirrels and the birds, sharing nicely, give the squirrels their own stand above the ground in a tree. They make platform feeders for squirrels, and those are great. Rabbits. Rabbits obviously love carrots, but a big thing with rabbits and smaller animals that are ground dwelling like chipmunks is a safety issue. So they want to be able to feel safe. So if you're able to build a brush pile, that gives, nearby where your food area is, a brush pile helps them to feel safe, because then they can, shelter or run in the brush if they feel threatened. But root crops are great. Branches of trees, if you have fruit trees, apple trees are a favorite, but hawthorn, willow, ash, mulberry is a big favorite. So if you're doing any pruning or just have some branches that fall down during a storm, you can move those, out of the way, but in your feeding area. And the ground animals, really like those sticks to chew on. So you might have animals that are omnivores, like opossums and raccoons in your area, and they will certainly come clean up feed, grains and seeds and nuts that have spilled out of the bird and squirrel feeders. They also enjoy fruits and root vegetables. A word of caution when you're feeding raccoons is, in late winter, if they're getting hungry and you have poultry, you do need to protect your poultry. Also, that would come into play with if you have any weasels or minks or foxes that are coming to your feeding area. Those animals are more carnivores, although the foxes do like berries. But remember to take precautions. And so never, ever, ever use poultry wire. Poultry netting, poultry fencing, it's all crap. Don't use it. Wear cloth, welded wire, small, 1 inch by 1 inch. That's what you need around your, perimeter, in anywhere that goes into like your poultry house, or if you have domestic rabbits, make sure that, they have a wooded floor area that they can get into, because sometimes animals, including domestic animals, will pull rabbits down, through the wire. And so very important to have secure housing for your animals. Even little holes, a hole that's very small, predator can either get through or they'll work it. Raccoons are really good at manipulating things. Rehabilitators often have a hard time keeping raccoon babies contained because they figure out how to unlock things. And they're like, oh, I can get out and go have fun. And so not necessarily fun for the rehabber. But do take precautions. Don't feed pets outside and then leave the food outside, because that, possums and raccoons love cat food. They think it's the best thing ever. And so, one tactic you can use is to feed your barn cats and, then pull up the dishes and, don't leave them out during the day, because that will draw critters who want to share. So deer are beautiful, but they can be dangerous. And, even wildlife rehabbers take precautions to try to not let the deer associate the food with the human, because bucks, when they're big and they have antlers and they weigh 200 pounds, they get pretty pushy, shovey. And so they think that a human should be giving them food. There have been incidences where they just come up and start shoving and be like, you're supposed to give me food. So feeding deer always needs to happen in a remote area. It's not a good thing if you're in a subdivision to do. But if you have some property and you can, feed them remotely, then that's a different story. One of the things that we always used to do was make a deer garden. So in the late summer, in the back field, plant root crops, turnips, radishes, those kinds of things deer love. Even some late green beans if you can get them in. And then, that's the deer garden, and then they can munch on those. And of course, root crops will stay, pretty well in the ground, even when the ground starts to freeze. So that's a good thing. You can also put out hay, take hay down to, a remote area and feed them, which is, nice if you get a lot of snow. So if there's deep snow, the deer can't move around as well. Hay is a great option for them. You do have to be careful depending on your state. There are some laws about feeding deer, especially in the fall around hunting seasons, and it has to do with baiting the animals, as far as feeding them so that you can have them in a location that you can then hunt them. That's illegal. Deer should not eat corn. I know they sell a lot of corn, for deer and for hunting, but corn is actually very bad for deer. It can cause bloat. So corn ferments in the rumen in deer and can be very harmful. So no corn for deer. So I hope that you've gotten some good information out of this video. Please like the video if it gave you good information, and share it with your friends. I appreciate that, and that helps it to go out to more people. So thank you for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.